Mr. T goes to a Tupperware party, will not be seen at this time, in order that we may bring you this after-party mess.
Remember when kids' TV didn't care about rules? When a show could open with a public execution joke, throw a kid in a dungeon, and dump slime on whoever said the wrong words? Yeah, welcome to the most chaotic show that ever aired for children. It was called You Can't Do That on Television, and it didn't just break the rules, it sprayed them with cafeteria goo and laughed. This weird little Canadian sketch show didn't just sneak past the censors, it bulldozed through them with a bucket of mold and a sarcastic 12-year-old holding a punchline. Somehow this mess of lockers, janitors, and mystery liquids became the reason Nickelodeon exists. Today, we're diving into 10 facts so gross, weird, and accidentally brilliant, they might just ruin your childhood memories in the best way possible. It didn't even start on Nickelodeon. Before the slime, before the Nickelodeon fame, You Can't Do That on television was just a strange little experiment airing quietly in Canada. No budget, no big plans, just a handful of kids, a sketch comedy script, and a local Ottawa station called CJOH that probably didn't realize it was about to birth a slime-soaked legend. The year was 1979, disco was dying, Atari was winning, and somewhere between weather reports and hockey recaps, this chaotic kids show slipped onto Canadian screens. It was messy, it was weird, it made parents double-check the channel guide, and it was exactly what Roger Price and Jeffrey Darby had in mind. Complete kid-run anarchy. Then, in 1981, a brand new American channel called Nickelodeon stumbled across it. They were desperate, like we'd air a moose playing hockey levels of desperate. So they picked up this scrappy Canadian chaos machine, aired a few test episodes, and boom, it exploded. Kids in the US went nuts for it. Nickelodeon, which had been all about safe, educational programming, did a full 180. Out went the alphabet songs, in came sarcasm, rebellion, and green goo from the ceiling. They didn't just adopt the show, they built their entire brand around it. Moose was cast by accident.
This is a totally new kind of television program. It's made for ordinary Canadian kids, by ordinary Canadian kids. We're all new to television, so we're still trying to find our way around the studio.
Christine McGlade, better known to fans as Moose, was never supposed to be the star of anything. She didn't even audition. She showed up to the studio one day just to support her friend who was auditioning. You know, classic wing woman stuff. A quick cheer, maybe a post-tryout milkshake, then go home. Simple. But then Roger Price, the show's co-creator, spotted her standing in the back. He looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You either audition or leave." So Moose shrugged and auditioned. Just like that, she accidentally became the face of one of the wildest shows in kids' TV history. She wasn't trained. She wasn't polished. She didn't recite Shakespeare or pretend to cry on command. She was just a normal Canadian teenager who could take a bucket of slime to the face, wipe her eyes, and fire off a sarcastic one-liner like nothing happened. And that made her perfect. Moose wasn't playing a character. She was the character. Sarcastic, fearless, unbothered. She didn't care if her clothes got ruined. She didn't flinch when slime dropped from the ceiling. She became the unshakable anchor in a sea of absolute madness, without meaning to. She set the tone for the whole show. Real, raw, and too cool to care. They didn't want actors. Most kids' shows hunt for child stars. You know the type. Perfect smiles, stage moms, resumes longer than your grocery list, but you can't do that. On television wanted the opposite. Their #1 casting rule? No actors allowed. Roger Price and Jeffrey Darby didn't want polished kids reciting lines like mini professionals. They wanted awkward, loud, messy, unpredictable kids who still argued about who got shotgun on the ride to set. If you had headshots or an agent, you were out. If you had homework in your backpack and ketchup on your shirt, welcome aboard. These were real kids from Ottawa. They rode bikes to the studio after school. They filmed on weekends. There were no tutors, no trailers, no diva behavior, just a rotating cast of middle schoolers doing comedy sketches like it was a weird after-school club with slime buckets. And it worked. That raw, unfiltered vibe gave the show its weird charm. The jokes hit harder because the kids weren't polished. They were just being themselves. When a punchline landed or a bucket of goo fell from the sky, their reactions were real. And when someone froze or cracked up on camera, even better. The opening was a ripoff. If the opening credits of You Can't Do That on television gave you weird déjà vu, you're not crazy. Conveyor belts, flying heads, cartoon hammers smashing skulls, it all looked suspiciously like Monty Python's Flying Circus, and that's because it basically was. The show didn't just borrow from Monty Python's style, it straight up ripped it off. Executive producer Jeffrey Darby later admitted, "Yeah, we cribbed it a lot. But here's the thing, it worked. Instead of feeling like a knockoff, the intro felt like Monty Python's unhinged little cousin, who grew up on sugar cereal and chaos. It was loud, weird, and a little unsettling, and it set the tone perfectly. This wasn't going to be another polite after-school special. This was full throttle, anything-goes sketch comedy with zero adult supervision. So yes, it was visual plagiarism, but it was glorious plagiarism. It accidentally created stars. You wouldn't expect a Canadian slime show to launch a future rock legend and the guy who made physics jokes a billion-dollar business, but you can't do that. On television did both, by accident. Let's start with Alanis. Yes, that Alanis. Before Jagged Little Pill, before the angry ballads and ironic irony, she was just a kid with big hair and bigger braces getting slimed on Canadian TV. She joined the cast in 1986 and only showed up in a few episodes, but apparently, nothing prepares you for the music industry quite like getting drenched in cafeteria goo. Then there's Bill Brady. You might not recognize the name, but you definitely know his work. He went from writing gross-out sketches for kids to co-creating The Big Bang Theory. One minute he's scripting slime jokes and fake dungeon scenes, the next he's turning theoretical physics into prime-time comedy gold. That's the thing about this show. It looked like pure chaos on the surface, and to be fair, it kinda was, but it was also secretly a breeding ground for creative misfits. Nobody planned it that way. It just happened. It was anti-educational on purpose. While Sesame Street was teaching kids how to count and Mr. Rogers was gently explaining emotions, You Can't Do That on television was doing absolutely none of that. In fact, it was proud of it. Roger Price didn't just avoid teaching morals, he waged a full-on war against them. His philosophy was simple. Kids spend all day being told what to learn. For 30 minutes, they deserved nonsense. No lessons, no morals, just slime, sarcasm, and jokes about detention and farting. The show felt like a classroom coup. Kids took over. They locked the adults out and made sketches about gym class, cafeteria food, and yelling, "I don't know," at their own risk. It was loud, silly, and full of punchlines, exactly what every kid secretly wanted. It invented gross-out comedy. Before Ren and Stimpy smeared boogers across Saturday mornings, before SpongeBob made nose hairs and bathroom jokes mainstream, You Can't Do That on television was already deep in the muck. Literally. Burp contests, mystery stains, slime puddles, fart jokes, cafeteria sludge, they didn't care how gross it got as long as kids were laughing and parents were squirming. John Kricfalusi, the creator of Ren and Stimpy, even said that without You Can't Do That on television, his show probably never would have been greenlit. That's how big its influence was. It turned gross into rebellion, and Nickelodeon ran with it for the next 30 years. Getting slimed equals dollars. Most kids got paid for babysitting or mowing lawns. On You Can't Do That. On television, you got paid for getting annihilated by slime. And we're not talking about a few bucks. This was real, arcade token hoarding, comic book hoarding money. Say water, that's $75. Say I don't know, boom, green goo, $150. Kids weren't afraid of slime. They were hoping for it, rehearsing their lines like slime-hungry actors chasing a bonus check. Sure, it smelled like moldy ranch and regret, but for a 12-year-old in the 80s, it was liquid gold. One episode got banned. The show got away with a lot, but one episode finally crossed the line, hard. It was called Adoption, and within minutes of airing, phones at Nickelodeon lit up like Christmas. The jokes, meant to be edgy, landed like a slap to the face for real adoptive families.
Hey, Vanessa.
Yes, Andrea?
Would you like it if your parents adopted an orphan?
Well, that depends. If the orphan had 4 legs and a cute little tail, then I'd love it. If it had 2 legs, blonde hair, and answer to the name of Doug, I'd hate it.
It was pulled immediately, scrubbed from history, and still hasn't resurfaced. It's one of the only episodes Nickelodeon ever completely erased. Even chaos has boundaries, and this one finally hit them. The slime was a moldy accident. Nickelodeon built an empire on green slime, and it all started with a bucket of mold. For real, they left a prop bucket full of leftover food scraps sitting in a hot studio for a week. When they came back, it had grown a bubbling, living green layer of nightmare fuel. Most people would have burned it. Roger Price looked at it and said, "Dump it on the kid." That moment, it changed TV forever. You Can't Do That on television was a disaster by design. It wasn't clean, it wasn't wholesome, it wasn't trying to teach you anything, but it was funny, fearless, and way ahead of its time. It created stars, it built Nickelodeon, and it proved that sometimes the biggest moments in pop culture come from moldy buckets and winging it. Drop a comment with a fact that shocked you most, or the one that made you laugh and gag at the same time. Smash that like button, subscribe for more retro chaos, and above all, don't say, "I don't know."